Все, мы в эфире.
Hello, my name is Sergej Tchirkov, and on behalf of the Center for Contemporary Music of Moscow Tchaikovsky Conservatory, I'm happy to welcome you to this presentation, which is held digitally. And this is the presentation is going to feature 3 composers who have been teachers at the International Academy for Young Composers in the city of Tchaikovsky. So this is a kind of our collaboration with the Academy. So normally, this is a long tradition. So normally what we do, we held this meeting in presence at the conservatory after the final concert, when all the composers and all the participants are coming together in Moscow. But this time, due to the current circumstances, we are forced to have this digitally. So, but still, we decided that it's an interesting idea to give composers who were teaching at the Academy, they were also teaching digitally, and to give them opportunity to speak out in person and to present themselves, well, normally to Russian audiences, but as we are doing this now in English and we take advantages of the technology, so everyone is, of course, very welcome. And there will be streaming, and there will be also, this YouTube chat, so you're welcome to put your questions to our guests. There will be 3 meetings. So the first one is about to start now, and the second one will be held on December 11th. And on 11th, we are going to host a meeting with Oscar Bianchi. And on 15th, we are going to meet Andrew Tuvi. So, and today, it's my pleasure to introduce you RAPHAÉL CENDO, composer, Paris-based composer, a teacher, who basically doesn't need to be presented because everyone knows about what RAPHAÉL CENDO does and who he is. But still, I feel like I have to present to the small presentation, and I thank you for your understanding, because I'm trying to be not extremely formal, but it's just that just inform you on what's going to happen. So I mentioned already that RAPHAÉL CENDO was born in Paris and studied in Paris. He studied in the Paris Conservatory, and among his teachers were, for example, Alain Gosset, and then he was also tutored by Marco Stroppa, Brian Fornerho, Fausto Rometelli, and Philippe Manoury. And he's been teaching in different educational venues, and also in the summer courses in Darmstadt, for example, at different academies all over the world, in Royaumont, for example. And he also gave a lot of master classes and lectures in the United States, in Europe, and Russia, and I think also in Asia. So he was a recipient of many awards, and he was composer in residence at many academies and institutions. He received also many prizes, and I think one of the most recent prizes that he received was the Silver Lion in the Venice Biennale, which was quite recently in 2020. And I take this opportunity to congratulate RAPHAÉL on this award. So RAPHAÉL CENDO is normally to be associated with so-called musique saturée, a conception of saturation or saturated music in English. And basically, I'm going to ask a few questions about this, but it's going to be later. And I think that RAPHAÉL would tell more himself about his artistic approach and about his general idea of this concept. So my function here is basically quite modest. So I'm here to introduce RAPHAÉL, to put a few questions, and I encourage everyone to forward their questions that I will be putting to RAPHAÉL CENDO. We don't have the opportunity to do a direct meeting with all the participants, so I will be really a moderator, and my goal is to moderate your suggestions, your ideas, and your questions to RAPHAÉL CENDO. RAPHAÉL, thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed or to present to talk about your music today. And I also take this opportunity to thank Dmitri Kourliandski, artistic director of the Academy in Tchaikovsky, for making all this happen.
Thank you, Sergej. Thank you for
your word and for my biography. Hi to everyone. Very special time now because everything is now online and we can see each other, but it's always a pleasure to be with all of you guys, and especially in Moscow Conservatory. I want to thank also Dmitri for his invitation this year. And yes, it's really a strange time, and I think that there are a lot of questions that we can catch in this strange period that we live. And there are some resonance with the concept of saturated music, but I think also that we can think about the future of what this virus crisis push us to rethink about and reinvent the future of the music. Or I know it looks like how we can reinvent the future of the music, or how we can reinvent the music itself. But I think that in this period, we must definitely and strongly ask the question. This morning, when I checked the news, I saw that a new virus arrived in India. They're completely different. That's the coronavirus. So we can imagine that now we are in a new process of life, of our life. That's the catastrophe will be like a continuum, and during years. We must to accept that and to understand how we can manage with that, and us as artists, how we can reflect or recreate this moment, and to think what will be happen for the future of the humanity, and also our future. Because, and I know you young composers, I know that it's difficult also. It's life difficult. It was difficult before the crisis. I mean, for the money and how to continue to live, but it will be harder now. But we can think something else. Perhaps we can help each other first, and this is very important for me. We must to create a solidarity all together. So also solidarity to talk, to exchange, and this is very nice that some academies are online and open to many people. But also, and I wanted to tell that I'm here if you need some advice, see if you need some, yes, just exchange with me, please. And perhaps Sergej can send my email after my talk to all of you. It's important to have this minimum of humanity and minimum of contact. The crisis that we live, there are always the same question in our mind. It's when it will be finished. All this crisis, when it will be finished. It's not a naive question, because finally, when we went to the concert before, sometimes when we listen a piece, we say the same thing, when it will be finished, when all the thing will be finished. And you know, and sometimes with our pieces, we said, okay, wow, it's long, when it will be finished. Why I say that? Because the crisis gives us the chance, if I may, to have some questions that we can deal, to continue to have this special relationship between all of composers, all of musicians all over the world. And why continue to compose? The question was very strong before for me, and I hope for you also. But now it's really a question, why continue to compose? Which is the reason? Because there are no concerts anymore. There are a lot of repetition, finally, with the new composers. I mean, it's normal to check and to repeat what we have all around us. But I think that we definitely think about how to compose now. I think that we can't compose that we composed before. Why? Because if we analyze what we are not only artists or composer. We are some very sensitive person that we are connected with many, many things. We are connected to other people, we feel the things, we are connected to the universe. Even if we don't arrive to explain why, we are connected with news, with the entire world. We are like a satellite. We capture every movement of the humanity and of the universe. So the question is, for me, very simple. We can compose that we composed before, and it's the same for me. And it's very difficult. I mean, it's difficult to rethink our mind with the music and with the composition. The third question that we can have in mind is which sense we can give again to the creation. There are no concerts anymore, and I don't know when we will have another concert in the future. I just received an email this morning that another concert of mine will cancel again. So we must reinvent a lot of things. And it's not to reinvent, and it's already fantastic to have some concerts online, but we must reinvent our, yes, the sense of what is a concert today. When some very important things arrive, like this Corona crisis, we must, as artists, try to understand and reinvent. But before to try to give you some ways to think about that, I want to go first on the past, on my past. Today, I want to show you two pieces. The first one I composed 13 years ago, called Tract. And the second one is my most recent piece. It was created 5 days ago, called Homeless Carrera. It's very two different pieces. But to understand the way of where I try to go, I wanted first, and for me it's the first time that I go very far away on my pieces, but I wanted to show you the first step, one of the first steps of saturated music. But first we must to understand clearly what is saturated music, because it's not only a manière, things, a way to compose. It's not only that. When I begin to make, when I create the saturated music, it wasn't only because I wanted to make some loud sounds or to make a lot of energy. It's come from very deeper in my mind, in my body, in my heart, it was not to compose crazy music, you know, or nihilist music. It was because I wanted to articulate my visions. And when I say visions, it's real visions. Since I'm young, I mean, in my childhood, I had some dream awake, and I saw all the time, you know, some destruction of the things, and the building, the world, and humanity. So now, but I knew it before, the function of the saturation music is, or was, in fact, was to anticipate the catastrophe. And we can say that we are in the catastrophe now. Not only the COVID virus catastrophe things, but the mondialism catastrophe, the globalism catastrophe. So perhaps, as you know, there are 4 levels of the saturated music. The first one I call total saturé, all over saturated, and you speak about this anticipation of the catastrophe, of the crisis, of the mondialism crisis. The second one, I call that infra-saturation. It's, you know, music very slow, still saturated, but pianissimo, but with no dynamics, very high, no lot of movement. It's just like the sadness after the catastrophe. The third period of the saturation music is the formal saturation. What it means? When I composed before, and we will see with this first piece, tract, I was still on, I will say, a normal form. I will say first step, second step, third step, and the end. It's very French form. It's come from Olivier Messiaen, it comes from a lot of composers. So I wanted also to cut my relationship with this conception of the form. So when I made the formal saturated music, I wanted to demultipliate the form. So we don't have 4, 6, 7, 10 parts. We are 100, 200, 300 parts in the music. And I wanted also to show with this saturated formal music that we lived in the fragmentation of the society. Everybody for himself and against everybody. So this period, the third period of the saturated music, was exactly to show what's happened right now. And the last one, and I say the last one because, and I will speak about that because I think that the saturated music is finished. It's not I think, it's finished. So the last period of the saturated music, I call that historical saturation. As I said at the beginning, the saturation music, it's an excess of movement, or an excess of no movement, an excess of form. But it could be also be an excess of historical sound. And this is really important for me now, to accept everything, every sound, like in our society. Why we reject the sounds of that people before us in the 20th century said, no, tonal music, no. chords tonal, no, or no, use this instrument, no, it's not modern, you know. Now we must to make a piece, a real piece with all these sounds and accept it. It's like in our society with all the communities, we must to accept everybody and to make a new sense of music. It's important for me always to not make the music for the music, to demonstrate my competencies of how I can make orchestration or how I can, make a good movement of contemporary saturated sound. But it's always important for me to have connection with a human being or with the universe, what I said before. In this last period of the saturated music, historical saturation, when I say it's a last period, it's because this is the end of what we can do with the saturated concept. And I said again, the function of the saturation music was to anticipate the catastrophe. This is why I think it's finished. And also because now the sound of the saturation music or the sound of extending techniques are repeated again and again ad nauseam. Always. When we went on the concert, or now with the concert of online, we are always the same things, the same music. And sometimes we don't understand why we listen this kind of music. Now it's boring. His function was only to anticipate the catastrophe. Here we are. So it's stupid to repeat again and again and again the same concept. We understood that, okay, we are here. And as an artist, we must to anticipate the future and propose another things, other concepts to think. But this will be at the end of my talk. First, let's go back on my past. And with this piece, I will send you the links. Yeah. Okay. But before I want to explain this piece a little bit. So I wrote it 13 years ago. And I remember I wrote it on the ping pong table in Corsica, in Corse, in this island, French island close to France. And I spent, I think, all my summer to write this piece on the table ping pong. Why is the table ping pong? Because I didn't have another table to write. And I remember that I was like on the background of this house and compose all the day this music. And I wanted to push very far away this concept of saturated music. The first one, the excess, the total saturated music, until the end of something. I wanted to really to explore all the possibilities, and also with the contrapunct of the saturated sound itself. So I compose, and it was really a very strange time for me, this first period of the saturated sound, because when I composed, I cannot arrive really to hear perfectly what I write, because I try to make some new texture, new movement of sound. So I was not sure that it will be works, and perhaps I'm not sure yet if it works. Why I say that is not only for me and to speak about my story, but this feeling that sometimes we cannot hear really clearly what we write. It's really important to adopt, to don't know what it will be happen. Because sometimes when we go in this way and we can't arrive to control all the parameters of the sound, I mean, in our mind when we compose, it could be means a lot. It means that we are perhaps in a new way for us, not for all musical things, but for us. It's important to lose the control. And you will see, dear composers, when and perhaps you felt already this sensation, but when you feel this sensation, it gives you dubs for sure, but you will be very exciting to do that. The creation is this, it's not to repeat what the whole composer made. It's not to repeat, it's just it's a research. This is why we are very different than some other music. It's real research. We are on the process of to be higher. That's sometimes the music can propose the middle things, but we can be higher. And it's not because we are the best, it's not the things, but it's because we want to show that another world is possible. So I made this piece that we will listen in a few minutes. And as often, the premiere was a catastrophe. I mean, not with the musician, but first it was a catastrophe for me because I didn't understand why I wrote this. I say, wow, it was too much. It was like a Wagner piece, repeat, and repeat. Because it's also the process of this piece, the repetition. And also because the people on the audience was very upset and against the piece. So it was, again, a new experience for me to have some people who say boo, and you go on the stage and you go home and you say, okay, what's the shit I made? What a disaster is it? Perhaps it's a disaster. I don't know, because I didn't listen to the piece since a long time. So with a new hearing, but if I say that again, it's for you. It's not to speak about me. The hope of what we do, sometimes we lose it. It's normal. We lose the hope and the desire of what we do, or the respect also of what we do. It's a normal process. This is why it's so difficult, and I'm still in admiration with all of you guys and with my some friends or some very respectable old composers that they still continue to compose, because it's not a normal way. And for that, we must to respect that is not a normal way and to accept entirely our function. But I will speak about this after the listening of this piece. So I don't know, Sergej, how you manage it?
Just a moment. We will come back to it in a few minutes. I just wanted to ask you something. When you were talking about these 4 levels of saturation and music, I thought, there is a very important aspect. This is instrumental aspect. Yeah, because also musique saturée, this is in a way a kind of excess of instrumental gesture, when the instrumental gesture is driven to its extremes on the one hand. On the other hand, you have to be precise if you're playing, especially if you're playing saturated music, then you have to be really precise. Otherwise, the audience would lose the feeling of this energy. So, and this also, in a way, an excess of precision in the performance. And I mean, that was quite obvious, but you gave it another perspective when you said that it was a kind of pre-catastrophical music, so that there was a vision of the coming catastrophical things. And I just wanted to ask you about this instrumental aspect of this, let's say, perspective, instrumental perspective of the saturated music, especially with regard to these, let's say, catastrophical perspective. Because obviously, you know, before saturated music, we all had Helmut Lachenmann and Salvatore Sciarrino, who also explored the sound and its physical and its just appearance, so the sound as it is. And obviously, when saturated music came, then it was something totally new because of this excess of gesture, I think. So that's what I think, my just personal experience of bumping into a composition of saturated music. And so that would be the question. Just a little bit expand about your vision of instrument, of musical instrument. And I also wanted to put this question before your work, because probably it would give the audiences a bit different perspective on the, you know, on the whole piece that we are going to listen to now. Thank you.
Thank you for your two questions, Sergej. Yes, for sure. It's not in improvisation. Saturated music is not right improvisation things. What is great is when sometimes we heard it like an improvisation, but finally it's not, definitely not, because it's writing of an excess and precision. But this music, and especially the first period of the saturated music, was how to lose the control. Also. Yeah. Lose the control, but keep going on the precision and on the formalization of the interior piece and the movement of the piece. For sure, it was really, really, really important in this moment, and it was also difficult to explore all this sound with the musician, because it was some sound was new. You know, I don't know some new music arrive like that always come from somewhere. And for sure, there are one part, even if it's very little one part, but from Lachenmann, Helmut Lachenmann. But it was still on the serialism things. And he said that, I don't know if he said that now. And happy birthday if you are if you listen to me, Helmut, because I think it was his birthday days ago. And yes, it was still on this mood and of the serialist music. You know, he used always the same serial things, piece after piece. And what is the serialism? Because the function of the serialism is also very important. I mean, the second period of the serialism with Stockhausen, Berlioz, Boulez, it was to reconstruct after the war the Europe. And there are a lot of things that they say that, yeah, we use the serialism to reconstruct with our power, with the music, Europe. And they made a lot of, there was very strong to make some cross between all the Europe. So I think we are not here yet anymore. We are more in the destruction of every bridge that they construct. What was your first question?
that was sorry, I know it's a bit complicated. That was this instrumental aspect. The instrumental aspect. So I just draw a parallel with what you said about composition, the same parallel with actually performance of saturated music, that it's a kind of excess of gesture and at the same time it's excess of precision. And how does it relate to this catastrophic vision? So
okay,
good
yeah.
question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the bridge between the catastrophic vision and the music. It's speak by itself. But yes, for the composing and the writing, it was very. He gave us, Frank Bedrosian and I, he gave us a lot of joy, I must to say, to invent some new science and try to to see how to develop it and how to yes, how to articulate the form. And we was all this question of the writing and how to write saturated music. So, and also the relationship with the musician. At the beginning, it was, and especially in France, because you, as you said, we were in France in this moment, and you know that French people and French ensemble are very academic. Finally, there are very strong rejection of everything is new at the beginning, and after, you know, as French people, they accept it. You know, they accept it.
This is at least what they used to be back in the time. They used to be academic.
Yeah, it's perhaps it's the function of the French music. I don't know why, but it's and I remember when Gérard Griset arrived with spectralism, it was also very, very difficult for him to, and this is why he worked with a German ensemble or Austria ensemble. Finally, the same for me and Frank, for Frank and I. Yes, and you wanted that I speak a little bit about the piece that we will heard. Yeah. What I can say before listening, it's yes, it's all the world of the saturated music. We are, if I remember well, flutes, tubax is very low saxophone instruments. We have some strings. We have harps and percussion. I don't know. No, we don't have percussion. It's 7 musicians, I think, something like that. Yes, and I wanted to explore every possibilities of the instrument. And for example, the piece, but I will speak about the piece after. Okay. Begin with a big shock, and we have only the resonance of the strings, and they play with the filetage. You know, this is a metallic things on the bow, and we have this very particular granulation. But I think I prefer to listen on it. Okay. And yeah, after I will speak.
Good. Then we are ready.
Yes. Okay, so I will explain a little bit how, if I remember well, how the piece was constructed. First, as you heard, it's not only some mass sounds, it's really a research of the contrapunts, saturated contrapunt. What it means? And it was a question, and now it would be a little bit naive to say that, but the question for me was how to create fusions with different instruments. Now we know that every composer in this mood, we know that it works. But at the beginning, I didn't know that. For example, the saxophone, when you play with this special sound, it uses some very high harmonic with the voice. And my question was, it is possible to create fusion with the scratch of the strings. And it was not very easy for me to accept that could be works. But when I composed this piece, and I was really the moment, and I think perhaps I wrote the manifest of the saturation before. Yes, it was before, if I remember well. But the question was, and after the first performance of this piece, why finally it works? I mean, it's work that we make connection with a scratch sound and with this very high harmonic of the saxophone and and the voice into the saxophone. It's not only a problem of the sound itself, it's also a question of the characteristic of the sound. It's not anymore a saturated sound. It's finally a granulation sound and complex sound. And this is really important for us and for the future when we compose a piece, to do not research some easy connection with the sound. For example, when you use a bow on the crotals and you play the crotals and you have a very glissandi of harmonic on the strings, okay, we know that it really works because the sound are very near. It's an imitation of timbre. In this case, there are not imitation of timbre, except perhaps the piano and the harp, but I will speak about that after. But it's really the characteristic of the sound. And for me, it's very important to don't fall on the very easy way that the music can give us. And my example with the crotales and the harmony with the strings is a perfect example. I mean, and especially now with music design, there are a lot of music design that they made only an object for an object in an easy way. But the characteristic was very important, the granulation. And finally, when we speak about saturated music, it's a story of the granulation. We can say in encyclopedia of the granulation, to explore all the possibilities of the granulation. And when we analyze granulation, what is it? It's the frame very, very close each other, and you can play on the time of this granulation. So it means if you extend a lot the granulation, we can have some very slow thing. It's still granulation and it's still saturated music, but in a very slow tempo. So the question is how also to organize some contrapunts of granulation. And it was also one of my research at this moment to articulate contrapunts with granulation. This is why sometimes we have this mass sound, but inside, and it's never the same. There are some lines, and you can follow whatever you want. It's an open world. You can choose the way that you want to listen. If I may make a parallelism with Bach music, yes, the contrapunct in general in music, we have also these possibilities to follow the line what we want, and not the main lines, not the melody one, not the melody lines. And I like this idea to have in this access the possibilities to follow what we want, and also perhaps give to the piece many other possibilities of re-listening it. So the beginning, for example, it speaks very strongly. We have this big shock, bam, with the saxophone, the piano, the harp, who play with a metal stick on the low strings, and we have this resonance of the strings. Very strange resonance because it's metallics. It means that suddenly the impact create these lines that it's connected. It's not the same, but it's connected. We understand the strings because we have these things on the piano and on the harp, but it's something new, and it's just an exploration because they move a little bit between alto punticcello and ordinario, and it changed a little bit the register of the granulation and also the density of the granulation. So it's a consequences, the first 2 and 3 bars. It's a consequences of this shock that we have at the beginning. I don't want to say that this piece is only consequences of something else, but this beginning finally give all the ideas for the piece. And what's happened in the beginning of the bars is what it will be happen on the rest of the piece, is variation of that. It's only variation. It was my time that I wanted to work with very, very small material. Now I know that a lot of people work with only one material, and it's great, but I think that we must imagine something else. But I will speak about that later for the last piece I want to show you. And the question was how to create different colors with the same energy. So for sure, finally, the possibilities with saturated music, there are not a lot of things that we can manage. Timbre, register, energy, so movement also, and that's it. I don't want to speak now about the form. So there are only 4 levels, but if you combine in a different way these 4 timbres, we can have a lot of diversities with the music. Even if I said already that it's finished, saturated music is finished, because also we explore all the possibilities of this. The combinations, it's like serial music. When you make all the possibilities of the combination of the series, the piece is finished. I don't remember which composer said that, Schoenberg, or I don't remember. But it's the same with saturated music. When all the combination we explore and we make all the things, that's it. And it's not only for the piece, it's for the entire movement of the saturated music. Yes, and I will finish with this, and if you have specifically some question with this piece, but it's really the beginning is the stretch of all the piece. This impact is a stretch of all the piece. And the rest of the piece is just to develop and the color, the timbre, the movements, and to explore with different register the movement of the saturation.
I have a small question. You were talking about a timbre and about the instrumental gesture. Do I understand correct that actually in saturated music, the instrumental gesture cannot be separated from the timbre?
Okay, let me think just to be precise. Yes, but it's not only for the saturated music, finally, it's for all the music. Except the conceptualism music, that it's something that is going. I know that in Russia now it's since a long time, but we know it since a long time, the conceptualism music. But now what I can hear in Germany, for example, they try to cut the relationship with the thing. So it's just to show the objects itself. But except this way of the conceptualism music, I think that in all the music, we cannot separate movement and timbre for a very simple reason. It's when you produce a song, you produce an excess of something, an excess of no sound, or I mean pianissimo sound, or fortissimo sound, or mezzo forte. It's this action. It's already movement. So the movement and the timbre, we cannot split it. It's impossible, except again on the conceptualism music.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. So this piece tract was the first. It's take part of the first period of saturation music, total saturation. And as I said at the beginning, after I needed to develop and to change a lot my mind, to reinvent for myself first my music, because it's always the same. I don't know for you, young composers, but when I repeat myself, I'm not in a good mood after that. I mean, okay, it's like an automatism of writing, and I feel me old composer when I repeat myself. So I needed and depressed composer too. So I need all the time to reinvent for myself my music. So I made 4 steps that I said at the beginning of the saturation music, and the last one that I wanted to speak a little bit about is what I call historical saturation. And I say again, this is the last period of the saturation music. After that, it will be not possible, not only because I made for my own point of view all the possibilities, but because there are no sense anymore to use extending technique, or only extending technique and saturating sound or whatever, because their function was to anticipate the catastrophe, and here we are, and not only for the COVID, but for the capitalism, the globalism way. So when I finish the formal saturation way, it was very difficult. I wrote 3 pieces in this mood, formal saturation music. Sorry. And I wanted again to anticipate and to take a look, anticipate the future and take a look on the present of the humanity. What I said, for me, I need to compose to see what's happened around me, and to try to anticipate the future. It's our function as an artist to have this strange movement between the past and the future. We are always in this mood, and even if we don't know that, finally we are always in these waves between the past and the future. and not only for the music, but also for what we feel. Sorry, the present and the future. So I wanted to anticipate, and believe me or not, but believe me, it will be arrive one day. It will be not right now. It will be in years, but it will be in our society after this big fragmentation of the society, a sort of new bridge between human beings. And it's why I wanted to show with historical saturation, to accept all the sounds, because all the sounds are equals. If you think it's not, it's because you don't understand not the sound itself, but how to articulate the sound. Because in composition, finally the sound is nothing. The timbre is nothing. It's how we articulate the music. And this is why, for me, I like some composers because they articulate very well the sounds, and I'm not close to other composers because I don't understand, or it's very easy, the articulation of the sound. So finally, the sound itself is not so important. And Fausto Romitelli says something very important. He said, all the music or all the sound are connoted. It means that finally nothing is connoted. It's positive and the negative things. So we can work with all the material we want. And we can mix whatever we want if the articulation is still interesting and intelligent. And when I say intelligent, it's very important. You know, the word intelligent comes from the Latin things, interligere, liés ensemble. I don't know, Sergej, why, how we can translate in English interligere, liés ensemble. To put all the things together. We can
integrated.
Translate. Yeah, integrated. Yeah.
Integrated.
Yeah, thanks, Sergej. And this is also one of our powers that we must to develop and work on, how to integrate many things. And the intelligence it's also here for that in the music. And yes, because also the crisis of the COVID, a lot of pieces in this new and the end of the saturation music was postponed. So I can just show you one of them. I have two pieces in this mood, in this research, but I wanted to show you the last one and exchange with you with that. And after that, I will explain a little bit the piece, how it's built. It's a piece for saxophone, quartet saxophone and electronic. The electronic is, I play on the stage with a modular synthesis. Everything is written for me, I mean, for the performance with a modular synthesis. It's important because it's not an improvisation. It's a lot of job and a lot of hard job before the concert to do it, to follow the score as a musician as well. So let's go to listen it, and I will speak. I send you the links, and please, Sergej, the piece begin at 4:40. Before it's an interview, it's not so interesting. Well, it's interesting if you want to say to take a look after, but not now.
Yeah, just a moment.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I think that we are basically ready. Yeah.
Okay. Few things about this piece. As you heard, there are a lot of chords from the tonalities, except the end that is a repetition of what's happened around the beginning. We have very specific articulation with the tonality. But all the rest of the piece, when I use tonalities, they are not the functionality of the tonalities. I mean, they are not the normal process of the tonality itself, except the end and a little bit of the beginning. And finally, the piece is a lot of based on cantus firmus. It means that we have these chords and we have this kind of granulation things at the beginning, just after the impact again. Finally, we have the soprano who play without a mouthpiece, and behind we have the chords. For me, it was important to try to incorporate the tonality chords, because on this process of historical saturation, and after I will tell you which other sound or references. I don't like the term references. I must work on. It's just the beginning of my new conceptualism thing. So, but there are different levels. But yes, this cantus firmus was very important for me, and especially because before this piece, I wrote a piece called Berlin Toccata for string quartet, keyboards, piano, and electronics. That I explore also the things a lot of with the piano, with a special piano. I don't know now, we don't have time perhaps to listen on it, but it's on YouTube if you want to take a look. It's called Berlin Toccata, and you can listen it if you want after my talk or later on your life. What I wanted to say, cantus firmus, chords. Yes, so in this piece in Berlin Toccata, the piece I wrote before, I explore already these kind of things and try to see that it could work to accept all our history. I mean, not only the story from the past of the music. There are a lot of things in this piece that we heard, a fugato, and it's written on the score. Sorry, I don't have yet the score, so I cannot show you the things. I have my handwriting, but not published. But there are a lot of things that come back from the past. But it's not only for the past, but also from my past. I remember when I was young, and I'm sure that it will be the same for you. And it's still for me, and I'm sure that it's still for you, the same. When I play piano, I directly play a C minor chords and develop the normal things that we heard, in fact, in this piece. It's a C minor, the cantus firmus, what we heard at the end, it's a C minor chords, and after it's normal processes of tension and détente. I don't know how we say détente in English, but I'm sure you understand. It's also to make peace with our history, to accept also where we come from. And if you take a look on this perspective, because we are rich of a lot of music. And finally, I don't understand now why we want to erase it and to not incorporate it, to accept finally all our history, the globality of our history. And to make the peace with ourselves and make the peace also with the past. And now, when I listen music very concentrate on one way, for me, it's missed something. It's missed the truth, the entire truth of what we are. So, yes, after before to conclude on an opening what I work on now, I want to speak about this instrument, the electronic instrument, modular synthesis. It was also important for me to play with it. It's now it's 3 or 4 pieces I work on with it, and play it on stage. The sound is so particular. It's also a reaction against all the process electronic sound we can have, especially in France. But it's everywhere. A lot of in US also. You know, this sound with real time, and you know, it's an electronic who always follow the musicians and creates a big mass of sound. And yes, it's great. And except the one and the only one composer, there are a lot of composers that work very, very well with real time, like Philippe Manoury or Yann Maresch, for example. But for the rest, it's a lot of repetition of the same sound. Finally, the real time don't give you a lot of possibilities. And also, it's because for me, it's missing, even if the real time follow the instruments, it's missing the physicality of the sound. This is why I wanted to work on the modular synthesis, to have this physicality of the sound. And even if you don't see the musician play with a modular synthesis, when you heard it only, you feel the movement and the excess of the movement. And also because the sound speaks also by itself. You know, it's an instrument was invented or developed in the 70s, and I don't know why we didn't compose after these 10 years that we use a lot this instrument, but now it's come back again a lot of everywhere, and pop music and everywhere. And I'm sure that there are a lot of things to do with that, and not only with this typical historical sounds, but also with the physical possibilities with this. Yes, when I say historical saturation is also in this way. We have this cantus firmus, the fugato, the tonality, but without process of the real tonality. This sound from the 70s, the sound with the saxophone that they are still in research of complex sound. They are still on this research. One thing that it's important to say, because it was one of the very, very strong research of this piece. The chords that we heard, they are produced with the saxophone, but with the voice also, just to have the perfect chords. So this is why it gives like a ghost chords, tonal chords, and I wanted this quality. So after this piece, and after the piece that I composed for Ensemble Intercontemporain, the piece was postponed, so it will be played on the next summer, and I hope, because with all the constellation, I'm a little bit depressed of what's happened now for all of us. But I made a piece for Ensemble Intercontemporain for voice, big ensemble, and modular synthesis, and I play also the modular synthesis. And it will be the last piece of what I call historical saturation. Why I call that historical saturation, again, it's because it's still in the saturation way, as you can hear in this piece, with the complex sound, but there are this historical sound and chords that here. And after that, yeah, saturation music is dead. There's nothing to do anymore with that. When I said, I'm sorry I repeat again, but this is my function to repeat my ideas. The saturation music was only to anticipate the catastrophe. Now we must to reinvent our future. And I wrote a book, two books, in fact. It will be published in one, I hope, in January, and the second one this summer, to give another perspective of my work. But I think that it could be also a perspective for many composers. When I say that with the formal saturation, the fragmentation of the society, we need to make peace each other in our society, but also in our life, in our composition life, and with the material itself. And we make to do a reconciliation, the reconciliation of our story and our past, our present, and the future. And this is why I work in this idea of reconciliationism. We will put more and more these different elements of our history in our life. And there are a lot of things to do with that. I work on it. I will not explain too much because the conception is still in progress. But there are really something to think about this reconciliation, and to stop also to be focused on only in one idea of the music. This is why also I said that extended technique and saturation music is finished, is also because we heard that everywhere, every time, and now it's personally I'm fed up with to hear that, and to, even if some people try to reinvent some sounds, it does not make sense anymore. For sure, all the works with extended technique are on the top of the instrumental research, for sure. So we must continue to work with, but not only. When I speak about at the beginning about the articulation, and I know that perhaps some of you know me, and you know that it's so important for me, and I repeat a lot, and especially when we speak about your score, composers, the articulation, this is the base. And it's not the articulation of the material itself, it's also articulate in the entire history, our music. So this new things for me, the reconciliationism, is this opening that I'm looking for since a long time. And also it gives me a lot of hope to develop new articulation in my music, and very complex, because, and what I like with this concept of reconciliationism is that it's not focused on one material. You can do whatever you want with your own history and with the story itself. So I think that I finished my speech. Thank you for listening the speech, and if you have some questions, please.
Well, first, thank you so much. That was really exciting, and it was also, you know, for me personally, it was a kind of poetic, but at the same time a bit, well, not really sad, because, you know, the end of saturation means that something else is coming, and that's fantastic that you just briefly described, outlined the concept that might be potentially, that might change the saturation, etc., etc. just one question, maybe really something on the surface, technically speaking. This last piece, the Homeless Carrera that we just listened to, those tonal, almost tonal references, could it be a kind of one of this feature of this reconciliation style? Well, not style, but approach that that is aimed on reconciled. Also tonality and some gestures of saturated music, totality of the music context.
Yeah, sure. It will be take parts of that, for sure. Now it's how to. Now it's the two pieces I wrote. The third with Ensemble Contemporain piece. Even if the Ensemble Contemporain is go further from this piece, but the problem is now it's brute. It's brutal. I mean, just here arrive and. But I wanted this. Now it's how to articulate more and try to yes, to recreate the a new approach with tonality. It's very personal, but when I composed these three pieces, and when I heard two of them, I tell me, wow, it's fresh to have suddenly a C minor chords. I cannot explain why, because okay, it's come from a long time ago, and in contemporary music, especially, people say no, don't use it, and even if there are some, finally there are a lot of composers step by step who use now some tonality references or chords in their music, but something is suddenly you say, oh, okay, it works. It wasn't. I wasn't sure when I made the first piece. Berlin Toccata, that's the synthesizer play chords and the rest of the ensemble play. I wasn't sure of this, and I like what I said at the beginning. I like these things. So yes, it will be strongly a part. It will be not only. I extend a lot this conception of reconciliism, but it will be part of it. One thing that you said, and this is important, you say it's sad. I'm completely agree with you, and also because the end of the piece is sad. I mean, you are the things. It's a little bit nihilist, and yes, there are something sad when something is stop. But especially because I can say that because I made the saturation music, so I can say when something is finished, and for this, I mean for this style, but for sure it's finished because I don't know, I don't heard some new things from the other composer with extending technique or with saturation things. We are like we turn. It's an academism now. This is why, and I was always against academy. I mean, it's not a political thing. It's really on my body. And since my childhood, when I go to school, I was against all the things, but not to be against. But I didn't understand the academism things. So if finally I create some academies, not me only, Lachenman also, and but since a long time, or Brian Fernier also in this moment, and I don't want to stay, and I don't want to fight for that, and I want to move something else because I want to explore, and and I hope until my death to explore all the time. But what is interesting with this new approach with reconciliism is that it's opened a lot of. There are a lot of possibilities. It's not only to be focused on the graduation of or whatever, but you can explore a lot of possibilities, and it could be make a lot of different style of music.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And there was one question from one of our colleagues. We know that you have been active as a hardcore rap group performer, that you performed rap music, and the question was, how did this experience informed your your approach to composition. So did it influence somehow the way you compose, or the way you were composing? Because now obviously this is a big turn, but still.
Yes. The influence was very strong. But at the beginning, when I stopped to make what you say rap hardcore music, it was a little bit. It was more complex. But this is not the goal now to explain. But yes, it was like that, rap hardcore, and so I played on the stage. I played, and what was very important for me is the relationship between the instrument and with the body, the dance and the voice, and how to play. I play piano, and I don't remember what sampler. The sampler, it was a long time ago. It was 25 years ago. So yes, it definitely changed my vision of the music at this moment, and also because we explore a lot of saturation things with electric bass. Percussion. It was very an intense moment for me. It's really, I can say that this is the base of my brain and of my research. But it's already like that. When I came to Paris Conservatory, I reject during years this part of me, because I wanted to make contemporary music, serious music, if I may say. But I was stupid, you know. When you are young, you are stupid, and you don't understand that to accept all the part of yourself. Because for sure, rap music is very serious as a lot of music, rock music or classical or whatever. So I reject that, and finally, and I speak about him again. It was when I was a student in Royaumont, Academy of Royaumont. My teacher was Fausto Romitelli. And he said, okay, you come from there, but I don't hear that in your music. I compose like spectralism, academism things. And he just told me that. And it was just the beginning of the thing. So to try to connect it, a lot of things. Finally, perhaps my research is not the reconcilianism or the situation, just to make the peace with all my level or of my history of the things.
Yeah, perfect. So just a moment. Do we have any other questions? No. So then I thank you very much for sharing your experience with us, and I remind to those who will watch the translation on YouTube later that it was RAPHAÉL CENDO, a rapper, a hardcore musician who turned out to be one of the most influential composers of his generation and one of the co-founders of musique saturée, saturated music, who is right now doing the step in the future, which is pretty unknown future, and it's going to be a kind of reconciliation future. And that was extremely interesting. Thank you very much, Raphael.
Thank you to all of you, Sergej. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.